1-1, tough game to open against the Niners, one of the most stacked rosters in the NFL, but bounced back a little bit against the Tennessee Titans. But it didn't always look easy. And Ollie, we went into this season saying, like, yes, Jets still best defensive line in the NFL, or one of them. And I feel like it's been a little bit more of a struggle for that unit 2 weeks in. Now you lose Jermaine Johnson. You already didn't have Hassan Reddick, and that was just trying to make up for not having Bryce Huff, who is now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Where are you right now with the New York Jets, kind of in what you've seen a couple of weeks into this season?
Yeah, I think it's concerning. And I think the staff is chasing their tails in what they want to be. They come into the season, the Jets have always been the Jets under Robert Saleh. They play a pretty straight 4-2-5. That's who we are. We line up that way no matter the down and distance, no matter the formation. That's who we want to be. He did the same thing in San Francisco to great success. That is just really, really difficult as teams are piling more and more into how they run the ball,
Yeah.
how they overload things in the run game. To think, and then the trade-off was always, well, we can at least get the phenomenal pass rush. We're cool with people grading us with the run if we can get something out of the pass rush. Once that slips ever so slightly, you start to get into difficulty. And so from week 1 to week 2, they actually switched their structure quite a decent amount by going to this 3-3-5 is how it was charted at PFF. But when you watch the film, they're still in pretty much the same alignments. They are just standing someone up for the most part. They mess with what they're doing inside a little bit. So they were already saying, we have a big problem fitting the run. It's such a taxing thing on their linebackers. Their interior didn't play very well in week 1. So now let's try and change the structure slightly. And by doing that, they actually limited themselves with the pass rush, which is the reason they have this cavalcade of pass rushers they've drafted and brought in, is so that we can just run the hockey rotation over and over again. We all get off the ball as quick as possible, and we just swap them out, and eventually we get enough negative plays. We got a talented secondary. It will all work out in the wash, right? Once you start changing your structure in week 2 to be like, we have a real problem stopping the run here, and it limits what you can do rushing the passer, that to me is a staff who doesn't have complete confidence in those guys up front, doesn't have complete confidence that what they were running before will actually hold up with where the league is at right now. And when you go through the film and you go through the figures, I think that stacks up and there's merit to it.
I went back and I watched that Niners game, and they're so spread out. Like, they're so spaced out. To your point, not really being able to adjust or not wanting to adjust, whatever it is for the Jets. You got the Niners in heavy personnel. Like, the Niners would be in like 12 personnel. Sometimes it felt like 13 personnel, or you flip one of those tight ends for a fullback, and it's just a powerful set. And it's not even that the Jets necessarily play those plays poorly. It's just a numbers game at that point. You've got 2 double teams that are fully successful, and yeah, okay, maybe a safety or a linebacker comes in and makes the play, but Jordan Mason was already 5-6 yards down the field at that point. So you go, okay, we got him. We fit the run. We got where we realistically, for how many players were tight on the line of scrimmage for the 49ers versus how spread out the New York Jets were. I actually think that was a successful play for them. The problem is that the successful play looked like them giving up 5 or 6 yards. And it just felt like that was chunk plays time after time after time after time in week 1. And that worries me about this team, because if they're going to play that spread out no matter what, then other teams are going to recognize that too. And they're going to get more heavy in their personnel. And like you said, when I was watching that Niners game back, it just felt like there was so much stress on the linebackers. And they've got good linebackers. So, you've got to be able to, put your stars in position to be able to make plays. The problem is that, again, I just think that it was so spread out for them. And I just looked it up while you were saying that, because I was very curious as you were saying it, what the Jets' average depth of tackle was for run defense. It's actually dead middle of the league 2 weeks in. It's 4.21 as an average, and that's 16th in the NFL. I would have thought that they would be much more down the list, like on the bottom half of the league. And so I also have those concerns for them, and specifically how spread out they are. I don't know if you noticed that as well. I don't know if that's something that's like, hey, I don't really mind if they're that spread out. They're just not winning up front the way that they need to. But to me, it almost looked like they were losing the play before the ball was even snapped because of where the defensive linemen were aligned. What did you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is who they've been since Salah's been there. Last year, they had some really wonky ones. They had a game where there was 2 extra linemen in the game. They still say, we're 4-2-5. We got a split front, which is what Trevor's talking about, where you have two interior guys outside the shoulders of the guards. You got two wide M players. It's just a lot of space, and the stress on the linebackers in that system, fitting the run, what they have to do to help them out in the pass rush, then dropping into coverage. There's a reason why the Niners have been able to run that defense no matter who's the coordinator, and it is Fred Warner. It is not easy to find those guys, and their linebackers were unbelievable last year. But the reason the defense, is so volatile year to year is that finding linebackers who can do that year over year without defensive attrition, without having to switch your style slightly, is just so difficult. And those linebackers are really good. But if you're just in a numbers game or you have injuries, it's going to be just a huge problem for them. And it's interesting because the Niners, in that Jets game, they're both playing the same front, right? They're both playing a bunch of 4-2-5, really spread out with the front. And the Niners were terrible last year at defending outside zone and more of the kind of like lead toss plays. I think they were 26th in the league in EPA per play, something like that. They didn't make any changes. They were just like, we weren't good enough inside. Our best answer is to just get penetration inside. And those guys beat the Jets up in the interior in week 1. The Jets struggled to do that. In week 2, they try and change the front slightly, but the trade-off again is just that it's going to start limiting what they can do when it is a pass play and it's a pass rush. So I just don't know why a coach, the Titans use an extra lineman 6 times in that game, and they're still playing pretty wide out for the most part. That just doesn't make logical sense to me. It's too much strain on the linebackers, and there's not the pass rushing upside to bother doing it. And if you go through their pass rushing figures, they're okay-ish. Some of them are pretty good. But once you start looking at how they're getting to the quarterback, that is an underlying concern of the profile of who got them. Jermaine Johnson now injured, how quick they're coming. So they're not getting off the ball with real oomph. Once you start going through it, I think they're 23rd, 24th in the league in quick pressures, that's a pass rush pressure. Mm-hmm. Most of it is everyone's covered, really good stuff on the back end. Linebackers are excellent. The pass rush eventually gets home, you get a pressure. So if you're not getting that kind of drive off the ball, and this is what happens when you go through these hockey rotations, you're going to get a year where there's a big drop-off between the first group and the second group, and do you just tire out the first group, or do you hope the second group gets better? I think it's a real concern. Now, they might get right against the Patriots. That's an offensive line. They might go out there and beat them up. But in terms of over the course of the season, they now seem to be in a bind between philosophically who we want to be, then what are the correct coaching answers to the problems we're facing, and how do we actually get those two to align?
So is this, and when I was watching it and all the spacing too, just another stress on the linebackers, especially in that 49ers game, it was far too easy for the offensive linemen to execute a double team and then climb to the second level. They were getting free offensive linemen to the second level way too easily. And so even if a linebacker was there to really fit the way that they needed to, it's not like he was totally coming in as a free rusher. So to sort of wrap this up with the Jets, and it's also interesting, the 49ers and Jets parallels. If there's an area where the 49ers defensive line has struggled, it is in run defense. And it's that same, you mentioned, it's that same philosophy. That's where Saleh's coming from. I know he's been with the Jets for a while now, but they've kept a lot of those same principles the whole time since his departure. And you look at the Niners, they're great at getting after the quarterback when it comes to pass rushing, but defending the run, it's not like they're super stout against defending the run. And maybe it is just, it's sort of just a give and take. You got to choose a little bit more of one than the other. Is that sort of where we're just at with the Jets, and they've chosen to be more of a pass rushing team? Now they don't necessarily have the horses or the depth, or is there something that they can and maybe should do here to adjust? Should they be condensing their sets a little bit more, or is this just something, are they not really built for that?
Well, the problem is that because of the way they've built the team, when they went to say, we are going to reduce the front slightly against the Titans, the guys couldn't get off the ball. They're not used to saying, I'm going to drop my ass in the A gap, just sit here and ride it out. Those guys are used to flying up the field, so they were getting road graded off the ball. And then when it was a pass rush rep, they're stuck between two bodies being usually I have so much space. Usually it's me one-on-one with a guy in space. What's happening? Why is everyone here? So that is the real difficulty. Yeah, it is a trade-off back and forth. But as we mentioned at the top, just with where the league's at now, that style was awesome when everyone is throwing the ball all the time on first down.
Right.
When it's a heavy play action league, and it still is a heavy play action league. It's still a throw the ball league. It's still a run to win rather than run to to set the game up league, but teams are getting heavier. Every single team is trying to find a way to get to what would be vintage two-back football without having to put a second back on the field. Whether it's a tight end, a receiver, bringing in an extra lineman, that's where teams want to be, so then they can hit you with a play action shot. So just the logistics of saying, well, we are going to make the field as wide as possible against 6-7 blockers. We'll have two guys off the ball. We'll just trust those two guys to go find the ball, fit everything, and figure it out for us. That is all well and good when you have special players who can make special plays over and over again. And even the Niners who fit the outside zone, the toss stuff really well in week one. Once you dig through it, the interior guys played really well, but all the plays on the ball are their special dudes. Every time I looked up, it's Warner and Bosa high-fiving, being like, we got him. So they just got great players, right? So as good as it was stylistically inside, those guys did a great job. They helped them out. Still, where the ball ends up is with their two best players. So you just have to have great guys. I don't think Williams to start the season very well. McDonald isn't a run-fitting guy. Johnson wasn't a run-fitting guy, but gave you the pass rush upside, right? So the staff, I think, is really caught now in a difficult trade-off bind of how do we build our structure to be able to try and slow the run a little bit? What are we giving up with the pass rush? And we've built this roster to be a pass rushing team that just flies off the ball. And the big winner is Hassan Reddick, who must just be cackling at home every single down, being like, I can't wait for them to wire me somebody.
Yeah, that is obviously with Jermaine going down, which it sucks. Even more so than just, hey, we need another startable body in here on the defensive line. This conversation here and sort of what you have been talking about only increases his value more when you think about exactly how the Jets need to win on the defensive line, and it is with a guy like Hassan Reddick. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Reddick situation. It feels like the Jets have their heels dug in, and at this point, they don't want to budge because they don't want to budge on it. But man, it feels like they need him more than ever if they want to keep running their defensive line the way that they want to, or you adjust. So
it's really simple for me, Trev. To you, if we're running 25 pass rush reps a game, rolling through different guys, is Will McDonald, Michael Clemens, Takk McKinley, and Braden McGregor a championship pass rush?
A lot of potential in the group. I like the name, like the potential, but is that getting the Jets where they want to get to this year? I don't know. Like Takk McKinley's been around the NFL for a while. I like what he could be, but he's a depth guy. Braden McGregor, kind of the same thing. Former 4/5-star out of Michigan. Like, he got hurt during his early time, so he's still kind of figuring things out. Last year was a good year for him, but now it's his first year in the NFL. Will McDonald wasn't exactly used the right way when he was in his last year at Iowa. Then he comes into the NFL. You think he's going to be in more of a pin your ears back in a pass rush role, but he hasn't gotten on the field the way that you have wanted to. And then obviously, Clemens is a veteran, but you would probably rather have a stud pass rusher in that spot. So that group, I like the names, but I'm waiting for like a guy whose pass rush win percentage is as impactful as Hassan Reddick's or Bryce Huff's that it was the year before. So in that list of names, I like all those names. I'm waiting for the top name. Like, I'm waiting for you to say the top name in that group, which could have made all the difference.
And it's still all those guys, and what the Jets have done really well, the Niners have done really well. I'm sure you've talked about it plenty of times. Is they just find dudes every single year. You go, wow, this guy has 10 pressures. I didn't even know he was on a team this year, and he's just suddenly flying up the field and in the backfield, right? That is still in that structure we're talking about of a really wide front. Just get upfield, and if we can find athletes, we've got great coaches, we think we can figure it out. If you're now going to say we are more of a what would be traditional 3-4 style defense, we got three backers on the field because we want to ride out the interior and let our linebackers play sift and find football because we're getting snotted by the run game. Now those guys are playing tight to the line, have to hold on to things more. Those guys aren't those guys. They've built that group to fly up the field. All of a sudden, Hassan Reddick comes in, Will McDonald comes in, and you're saying to them, can you just hold things and ride it out? That group just doesn't have those skills for me. McDonald is a bit peculiar because of how he played at Iowa State compared to what we expect him to be in the league, right? So maybe there can be some development there, but it just feels like they committed so heavily to this style, and then to try and adjust it in week 2 and to see something to track moving forward is concerning.
Yeah, we'll see what the Jets are able to do, getting over obviously injuries, but also sort of lack of success and exactly how they thought that they were going to win along the defensive line going into this year.